Let's start by breathing in and breathing out. Repeat as needed. And let's just sit quietly for a few moments. Just sitting quietly with your eyes open or closed, doesn't matter really. Just sitting in presence, sitting in, there's no escape from presence. You say sitting in presence, and sometimes it's like, oh, where's the presence? There's no escape from presence. It's the only place you've ever been. The only thing that ever sticks with you. This presence right here, this awareness, this beingness. Your best and only friend. So our only choice is to be kind of forgetting about it or consciously relaxing into it. So let's just consciously relax into this presence for a minute. Okay, good. So today we are talking, I'm so excited. Today we are talking about John Keats, just one of the most brilliant poets to ever walk on this green planet. He wrote his first great poem in 1819, and 5 years later, he was dead. In those 5 years, he wrote a whole lot of the most brilliant poetry ever written in English. His life was short. It was tragic. It was mostly miserable. Orphaned by the age of 14. He had to nurse his mother through the 19th century plague was tuberculosis, which was known as consumption in those days. His mom died of consumption. He had to watch her die, nursing her through it, helplessly trying to save her. His brother, George, died of consumption. His brother, Tom, died of consumption. He nursed the one brother. He's totally in debt. He was steered into medical school by his guardian. And then when he graduated from school, he realized he had to be a poet, announced it to his guardian, completely got estranged from the guardian, cut off, managed to get his poetry published, was savaged by the critics, who a lot of it was about class snobbery. They condemned him. He was a Cockney poet. He wasn't a proper upper class poet. Fell desperately, hopelessly in love with the beautiful girl next door, Fanny Braun, but couldn't marry her because he didn't have any money. Little did he know he actually had money. There was an inheritance that was due to him, but he never knew it. It was sitting on the desk of a negligent lawyer. So he just, eventually he got sick with consumption, wound up sailing to Italy with a friend in the hopes that the warm weather there would make him better. They got stuck at sea for a month, tossing on terrible seas in crappy weather. By the time they got to Rome, it was mid-November, and it was cold there. So the whole point of going there was lost, but now he was there. In a 2-room apartment on the Spanish Steps. If you've ever been to Rome, or if you ever go to Rome, you go to the Spanish Steps and you can visit the apartment where he died, writing desperate, tragic letters and poems to Fanny Brawne. So his life sucked. The good news is that in contrast to his tragic life, was this spectacular poetry that he wrote. And every one of his poems, or at least of his greatest poems, are all glimpses of the transcendent. You know, and as you all know, because you've all had glimpses of the transcendent, some of you more than glimpses, when you're having that glimpse, you know, oh, this is where we poke our head above time, space, cause, effect, gain, loss, fame, shame, good, bad, suffering. This is where we rise above it. And we see that, you know, it's like when the sun comes out for a minute on a you know, day of crappy weather, you realize, oh, the sun is there all along. The sun is there all along. So I like to hope that those glimpses that we know Keats had, because he captured them in his poems and he shares them with us. So I like to hope that those glimpses of transcendence, you know, somehow, somewhere for him, were there shining above the crappy life that he lived. So let's look at his first great poem. I'm going to share my screen because you don't have this in your book. Hang on a sec. The share screen thing keeps showing me a bunch of pages. Excuse me, let me turn this off. Oh, okay, are you seeing on first looking into Chapman's Homer?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Okay, so the way this was written, one night in October of 1819, Keats went to the home of his friend and actually former teacher, and they were excited because his teacher had borrowed a book, and it was a book of the poetry of Homer, the Odyssey and the Iliad. And of course Keats had read the Odyssey and the Iliad before, but there were kind of crappy translations available in his day. This was the translation by George Chapman, who was a contemporary of Shakespeare's and wrote with the vigor and the energy and the vividness of, you know, close to Shakespeare. So they spent the whole night passing the book back and forth, reading aloud to each other, getting more and more excited. And you guys, hopefully, you know, you've had the experience where you just reading something just raises you into the Empyrean, into the celestial spheres. And this is what happened to him. And they finally, near dawn, his friend went upstairs to bed. Keats never went to sleep that night. He left, he went off someplace, sat down, and wrote this poem. He wrote this sonnet, and he managed somehow to get it delivered to his friend's breakfast table. For when he came down the next morning, it was sitting there. So this is Keats's first great poem on first looking into Chapman's Homer. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when, with eagle eyes, he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. Okay, let's take our shoes off and run through this. Okay, much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. So this whole first part is about, okay, I've traveled through the islands of the Mediterranean, which of course, which at that point he had not actually done physically, but he had done that in his reading, right? Um, he'd heard about Homer, right? That of all the oceans there in the Mediterranean, there was one wide expanse in particular, right? A wide expanse, a big some vastness. There was a vastness that Homer ruled as his demesne. Demene's an old-fashioned word for his domain. Right? I'd heard of Homer. I knew about his power, the vastness that he ruled over. Yet never did I breathe its pure serene till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Okay, so this is the setup. By the way, in the classic sonnet form, a sonnet is always 14 lines, and the first 8 lines are what's known as the octave, and they kind of set the premise. Often they'll ask a question or they'll set forth a problem. And then the final 6 lines answer the question, solve the problem, answer the premise. So it's a very specific 8 and 6 structure. Anytime you're reading sonnets, look for that structure. That's the basic kind of architecture of the thing. All right. And in this case, in this one, it's the sestet really where the thing takes off. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken. Into his ken means into his awareness. Now, this is not hypothetical. It was only 35 years earlier that William Herschel discovered Uranus. Now, that was a very, very big deal because the discovery of Uranus was not just, okay, there's one more rock out there swimming around the sun than we knew. Because Uranus was the first planet to be discovered beyond the classical planets. In other words, there were the planets that were known from time immemorial, and all kinds of astrology and astronomy and religious beliefs, all this stuff had been established around the idea, this is the architecture of the universe. This is the way God ordained it. There can only be this many planets. So to find one more rock out there meant, wait a minute, all bets are off. Wait a minute, the old smug idea that we know what's what, that's demolished now. Now anything's possible, right? So what a lovely metaphor this is for opening a book that just opens up, and for many people here in this session today, maybe it was a book, a work of literature, maybe it was a book of Dharma teaching, where it's just, oh, that kind of opening. A new planet swims into your ken. Or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific. Now, there's something slightly hilarious here. In Keats, in his excitement of discovery, got his conquistadors mixed up. What he should have said here was Balboa, not stout Cortez. What he's talking about was Balboa, who was down on the Isthmus of Panama, for the European conquistadors and explorers. As far as they knew, there was just land, and then the natives pointed him, hey, go up that mountain and see what you see. And he goes up the mountain, and wow, there's this huge ocean. It's the Pacific. So he was the first European to see the Pacific from the New World, right? And actually, he didn't bring his man up the mountain with him. He wanted to be, he wanted to be like Neil Armstrong. He wanted to make sure he was the first one to put his foot on, to take that giant leap for mankind. So, but that doesn't matter. This is poetry, not documentary. So we'll let it be stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise. Right? Your breath is taken away. You can't talk. The implications of this. And as a matter of fact, a little bit later, when they went down the other side of the mountain, and Balboa waded into the Pacific, planted the flag, and said, I claim this ocean and all the lands that it touches for the King of Spain. Good luck with that. But you see the implications there. It's like everything is different. We're looking at this thing. It's vast. It changes everything. He stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. And Darien is the name of the settlement that they'd established there, in at the time it was northern Colombia. But can you feel that silence? Can you taste that? Right? Silent upon a peak in Darien. It just hangs in the air. Right? So that's what reading can do for us. Right? That's what a great poet can do for us. So we know that Keats, he experienced that. It's really, he's really describing samadhi. He's really describing the moment where all your thoughts are suspended. You don't know what to think. You don't know what to say. You just, right? And he captures that in the poetry and shares it with us. We've got that forever. He died after 5 years, but we got that. Any thoughts or questions or anything about this poem? Because after this, we got more Keats coming up.
I just love that phrase, pure serene.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what he experiences then. He's experiencing that with Homer, but
yes.
That's the feeling that you were speaking of, that, yeah. Cortez or Balboa and
right.
The astronomer finding a new planet.
Yeah. The pure serene. Pure serene is samadhi, right? And you can get it in meditation. If things work well, if the planets line up and your digestion's good, whatever, you can get it reading a poem. You can get it walking down Main Street smoking a cigar. It can happen anytime. It's, Samadhi is not owned by the meditators. I love going back to the great quote from Richard Baker Roshi, right? Enlightenment is an accident. Meditation makes us accident prone, right? But it can happen. But great art also makes us accident prone, right? Lucky us. Great poetry, great films, great music. Oh my God. Yafa and I just watched a couple of days ago the the Los Angeles Philharmonic, which is one of the right these days under Dudamel. It's just fantastic, beautiful conductor. They become one of the finest orchestras in the world. And we've gone to see them a few times at the Hollywood Bowl, which is wonderful. You're outdoors, this huge, amphitheater. So during the quarantine, they've started doing concerts there with no audience. They videotape it, they put it online. If you go to YouTube, they just put this up a few days ago. They just did the Beethoven Seventh Symphony, which is to me, just one of the most transcendent pieces of orchestral music. And Dudamel, you can see his face, his way, his spirit is just so gorgeous, and you can see all the musicians just doing it for him. Be sure to listen with your best headphones or your best speakers, because it's a Beethoven symphony and the sound is huge. Okay. Anything else about this one? Let me, before we do another, poem, I want to show you a quote from a letter that that Keats wrote to his brothers, George and Tom. You're seeing this at once? Are you all seeing this?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so he was describing here in the letter, he was just describing a conversation he was in the middle of with someone about, art and creativity. And then comes this. At once it struck me what quality went to form a man of achievement, especially in literature, and which Shakespeare possessed so enormously. I mean, negative capability. That is, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Okay? Negative capability. That is, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Okay? Is that ringing a bell for you? Negative capability?
That also reminds me of that David Bowie quote that you mentioned on Tuesday or Thursday, but you might want to share that too.
Right. Let me maybe come back to that. I think what we have here is a major Western artist independently discovering the main principle of so-called Eastern contemplative arts. It's the principle of what the Chinese call Wu Wei, doing nothing, just being, hanging out, not just and he says the capability. Really, everyone has the capability. Really, to me, it seems it's the willingness. Are you willing to just hang out with whatever's there, not try to interpret it, not anticipate, not try to convert it, not try to digest it into your old stale conceptual system? Because if you can't do that, you can't experience anything new. You can't experience the freshness of the new. You're stuck with your old stuff, which most people do because it's familiar. That's why most people are not Shakespeare's or Keats's or Beethoven's, right? They all have to find a way to do that. And notice he says in literature, but he says a man, of course, we would say a person of achievement in any field. I mean, my favorite example of this is probably, because it's so clear, was Jane Goodall. You know, when Jane Goodall, the great primatologist, the way she got involved with the chimpanzees was her boss, Dr. Louis Leakey. She was a secretary in his office. She had no background in science. That's why he sent her into Tanzania to observe the chimpanzees, because she didn't know. She had beginner's mind. She did not know, and she was fine with that. She was able to, and there's this, if you have not seen it, there was a film from 2 or 3 years ago, a documentary called Jane. There's a few documentaries about Jane Goodall. This one is fantastic. They found, like in a closet, been sitting in a closet for 50 years, film that her guy that was her husband for a while made when she first started going into the jungle. And for one thing, she's gorgeous, great legs. So I was wearing those khaki shorts. And by the way, she knew it and she used it. They used that film for publicity to help them raise money to keep the research going. But she was just willing to, she knew what she had, because no one had really observed chimpanzee behavior in the wild. And everything that was written about it was wrong, because it was based on captive chimps. So what she had to do was just sit on a rock far away and just sit there serenely and just be for hours, for days, for months, and let the chimpanzees slowly get more comfortable with her, come closer and closer until they completely accepted her into their lives. And she was able to observe their behavior as it actually was. Right. And when you see this film, you can just see that all happening. She's so serene sitting there. It's that pure serene, Bob, that you're talking about. And you can just see it on her beautiful face. It's just great. And evidently the chimpanzees could see it. They could sense it. Someone else might not have worked as well. So there it is. That's how you do it. Of course, you have to hone your skills. You have to, but a lot of people master their skills, but the negative capability, the Wu Wei, that's the special sauce that makes the difference between a Salieri and a Mozart, between a Joan Jett and a Patti Smith. Right. Between monkeys and the Beatles. Okay, let's go to another poem. Let me see what I got. Okay, Bright Star. So we're going from his first great poem to his last great poem. His last poem, actually. So, hang on one sec. All right, share screen. Are you seeing Bright Star?
We're seeing a picture of Keats, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Yeah. So there's a painting of Keats. His red hair, his sensitive poet's face. By the way, he was 5 feet tall, just over 5 feet tall. In school, he won a lot of academic awards, but also did a lot of dreaming out the window and getting into a lot of fights with the bigger boys, and they were all bigger. As one friend said, he had terrier courage. Okay. Are you seeing it, Bright Star, now?
Not yet.
Oh,
No.
Do you need to scroll or something?
No, I need to get to another screen. For some reason, my Zoom shows you all one window and shows me another when I'm doing screen sharing. What are you seeing now?
It's scrolling to his bio.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let me try again. Okay, seeing it now?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So this is a considered to be Keats's last poem. He and Fanny Braun did become engaged informally, hopelessly. He was already sick at that point, just dying with tragic love and 25-year-old lust for her. And apparently he wrote the first draft of this when they first got engaged, and he finished while they were actually on the boat to Rome on that miserable voyage. He wrote the final draft of it, and he transcribed it into a book of Shakespeare's poems. Probably he just needed some paper. He had a blank page there, but I think that we can. I think is very appropriate. This to me, this poem it belongs in a book with Shakespeare's. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art. Let me just translate this one bit in old-fashioned English. Would I means I wish I. Right? So this is I wish I were as steadfast as you are. Okay? Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art. Not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite. Oh, eremite means a hermit, a monk in India, a sannyasin, an ascetic. Let's see if anything else. Okay, that's the only things I got to translate. Let me go again. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest. Still, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. Oh, God. This thing kills me. I mean, it starts with the fact that this is a love poem but it's not, he doesn't address it to the beloved. It's almost as if to talk to her directly would be too agonizing. So he talks to a star. What star is he talking to here?
Probably Venus.
Well, I have two thoughts about it. My first thought is probably Venus, because that's the bright star. Technically, it's a planet, but we call it the evening star. It's the most beautiful. It's all about it's love. Venus is the goddess of love. But also we like it because Venus is the first thing that the Buddha gazed upon in the morning when he finally realized his enlightenment after 49 days under the tree. So I would say probably Venus, except for one thing. Venus is not steadfast, right? That's a little problem with love, as it's usually, and beauty, as they're usually experienced in the mortal world. They're not steadfast. When Venus appears as the evening star, it's always within 5 degrees of the sun. In other words, it's hanging over the western horizon. It's only up there for a little while and then it sets. So the bright star would be Venus. The steadfast star would be Polaris, the North Star. Right? It's the only thing in the sky that never moves because the Earth's axis points to it. And if we want to make the case for the North Star, that's the one that we navigate by. That's the one that when you're lost, that helps you find your way home. That's the one that's steady. So actually, my guess here, I mean, no one knows, but my guess is that Keats, using his brilliant poetic imaginations, settling down into negative capability, fused the two. Give me a star that's as bright and beautiful as Venus and as steadfast as Polaris. That's the one I think he's talking to. That one doesn't exist. That one's transcendent. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art. Right? And then there's a dash. And notice that now everything, the next 7 lines all come between that dash and then this dash. So this is like, the car goes, makes a hard left turn. And then everything here is talking about being steadfast like the star until here, we make a hard right turn and come back. So this is the first 8 lines. This is the octave, contemplating the idea of being steadfast like the star. And it starts with the word not. So these whole 7 lines is about, okay, I want to be steadfast, but not in this way, not in the way that you do it, star, not in lone splendor, hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, right? I don't want to be like a monk, right? I want to be steadfast. What's steadfast? A monk is steadfast. A hermit, he stays in one place, and they would stay awake. I mean, and Bob and Tova, I know you've been with lamas who, talk about being on their 3-year retreats where, at certain points, no one sleeps. You just sit and maintaining, meditation for weeks at a time. Watching with eternal lids apart. In other words, being the witness. It's the silent witness to the world. And witnessing what? The moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round Earth's human shores. Right? In other words, seeing the whole world with all the people, all the human shores of life. That implies all of human activity. And it's all being cleansed. Notice all these images of hermit, priest, ablution is it's like, when people come down to the Ganges in the morning, they do their morning ablution, purification, pure, right? Or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors, right? So here's the star, like nature's patient, eternal priest or hermit, watching the waters, the snows. In other words, seems to be watching through the seasons, time going by, all of human activity going by. And here is this silent, distant, remote witness from it all. Okay, so that's one way to be steadfast. And the imagery is beautiful, and just it almost feels to me here as if, like, in his brilliant poetic intuition, Keats was anticipating those first photos that we saw, 150 years later, that the Apollo crew took of Earth as seen from space, right? You all know that great photo, the blue marble photo, they call it. And you see the waters, you see the snows or the clouds. It's like he could see what that was going to look like. Right. And it's beautiful, but then we get all that beauty, but it's beautiful, but it's cold. So no. Right. So now we get to so if we're going to be steadfast, and remember, this is a guy who's dying. This is a dying man's plea. How can I remain? How can I be steadfast? How can I be eternal? Right. So not this way. Beautiful, but remote, detached. No, not detached. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast. Ah, there's the answer. Can I somehow, I want to bring my head down out of the sky and park it on my fair love's ripening breast. I want to bring my steadfastness. I want to bring my eternity, my ever, eyelids ever open eternity, and bring it down to the earth plane. Right? And let me show you something really subtle. I love this stuff. Right? This whole first bit begins with not. Right? Now he wants to make the contrast. What does he do? He takes the word not and stretches it out to no yet. You see that? Not becomes no yet. Right? And this is how we move it further. It's that kind of attunement to the magic of language. It's just, there you got to be not only inspired by a lot of negative capability, but you got to really know your craft. You got to be a really good technician with a language here. Beethoven still has to know how all the scales work. Right? No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest. To feel forever. Okay, to feel anything forever, you got to stick around forever. So this is a plea for immortality. I want immortality, but I don't want to spend my immortality up in the chilly heavens. Right here, to feel forever its soft fall and swell. Now I'll show you another little subtle, amazing thing. What do we have up here? Gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow. Okay? Soft fallen mask of snow. And it's beautiful. And you always say poetry always has to be read out loud. If you're just reading it silently on the page, it's like looking at, music on the staff. It doesn't become music till you play it or sing it. So when we read this out loud, soft fallen mask, all the S's and the F's, they are soft. They're like snow falling onto the ground that already has snow on it. So it's beautiful. But look here, soft fallen mask of snow. Then here we get soft fall, right? Same first two syllables, soft fallen mask of snow. Now we have soft fall and swell. Right? Say it again.
She's breathing and she's alive.
Yes.
She's reactive.
She's breathing. She's alive. And in fact, in another if I'm remembering correctly, in another version, sometimes you'll see this printed soft fall and rise. No. I must have it wrong elsewhere because swell rhymes with unchangeable. All right. Soft fall and swell. Right. So snow only falls. Of course, snow only falls. But here, because the sound echoes it, it ties them together and it brings out the contrast. If I'm up there in the heavens, I can only watch stuff falling. Here we have the fall and swell. This is like the promise of resurrection. With each breath, we're resurrected, right? Awake forever in a sweet unrest. Again, forever, right? Forever. You give me immortality. And it's like, okay, give me the life transfusion from my love. By the way, when he got on that boat, he knew he would never see her again. I mean, you have to get the tragedy of this thing, the poignancy of it. But it's like, okay, if I can just get right, right on the other side of her chest wall, there's that breath. Can I tap into it somehow? Can this be my ventilator somehow? Can this love keep me alive? Still to hear her tender taken breath. Now, this word still is the most important word in the poem. Okay. First of all, another one of these subtle, amazing things. I want to show you how he set this thing up. Over here, no, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable. There's two stills here, right? But they're separated. Here, the two stills come together as the two lovers come together. That's good. Damn, that's good, right? So first of all, that's going on. Okay, secondly, what does the word still mean? It actually has several meanings, right? When we look at it up here, it means yet, right? Right up through this moment, right? Okay, but it has other meanings which all apply here. It means at least four different things, which are all additive here. Still, like yet, right? Like I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm not dead yet. God damn it. Right? But also, still means motionless. Motionless. I don't want to stir. I don't want to disturb her out of her sleep. It's you look at this interest, this irony. She's asleep. He's awake. Right? It's the reverse of what the situation that's on its way, which is, he's going to be dead. She's going to be alive. So I don't want to disturb her sleep, and I don't want to go anywhere else anyway. So motion. So still means yet means motionless. It means quiet, right? Her breath is so tender. I have to listen closer. I have to get quiet to hear it. Hush. And then those are all meanings that we're familiar with. And there's one other meaning for the word, which we don't have anymore, but they had in Keats's time. It meant always, perpetually, forever. Which, of course, is, that's just the deepest, the most fervent desire here. So it's quiet, yet motionless, forever to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. So Keats got 5 years to write this brilliant poetry, and the very last word of his very last poem is death. But you see, it's part of this equivocation here. What's happening here? We're living forever. We're dying. He's talking about swoon. What is a swoon? a swoon is like a faint. It's like a faint. I would submit to you, it's like when you look into the eyes of your beloved and there's the whoosh, or when you sit to meditate on a good day and there's the whoosh, or when you hear the Beethoven 7 or a beautiful Keats poem, there's that whoosh. It's transcendence.
And it's like surrender.
Yes, it's surrender. It's exactly right. It's the whoosh of surrender. And in that whoosh, when you look into the eyes of your beloved, all the separateness melts. The I, all the duality melts. The I, the you, the near, the far, the pain, the joy, and I would submit to you the life, the death. It all melts into the swoon of transcendence. It all melts into that whoosh. And, we're all going to die. But also, those of us who are really, 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 really lucky have had a chance to have those whooshes through Dharma practice, through the arts, through love, to see that whoosh. And we know that the dying stuff, the living stuff, yeah, it's there at a certain level, but that whoosh is the big thing. That's the big stuff. And so live ever, death, who knows? Who knows? Well, what we know is when you swoon, you don't know nothing. You very happily don't know nothing. Good stuff.
So Dean,
Yes.
First of all, that's such a beautiful poem. I've read it before and heard it read aloud, and it's like it's about as transcendent a romantic poem as you can have.
That's right.
It's how I feel about my wife, for
Yeah.
example. But
I know.
but also about the divine.
Yeah.
In fact, to me, I'm kind of a devotee in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition of Tara, the female Buddha.
Yep.
And as you remember, we had a teacher who would refer to Tara, whose name means star, like a light that shines in darkness.
Yes.
So I read Tara in that, or like Galadriel, the elf queen in Lord of the Rings, giving Frodo, here is a light that will, when all other lights go out, that will light your way.
Yeah.
The light in
That's
the darkness.
great. Yes.
And I want to mention
bright Tara.
Yeah. And
beautiful.
For those who don't know, there was at least I found it to be a marvelous, beautiful movie called Bright Star about 10 years ago of Keats.
Yeah. With Ben Whishaw. He's a wonderful actor. I've been scared to watch it because do they do it well? Is it to have the Bob stamp of approval?
I thought it was sublime. I mean, it shows the toughness of the life then, and his passion for her, and the poetry. And when you hear Bright Star, I won't say when, but it was magical. And I want to go see it again now, having had your treatment of Keats.
Yeah. Aren't we lucky that such things exist in our world? It didn't necessarily have to happen. Any one thing was different. He couldn't find a pen when he was on that boat. Of course, who knows how many sublime things almost happened that we'll never know about. Because the things that had to line up for Shakespeare to be Shakespeare. You had to have Elizabeth on the throne. You had to have so many things happen. The things that had to line up for the Beatles to be the Beatles. Including the fact that Richard Starkey, later known as Ringo Starr, had to get sick when he was in high school and lose a year of school and never be able to catch up. So he just forgot about school and kept drumming. And that he had to have been given a right-handed drum kit, and Ringo is left-handed. And when you listen to Ringo, the first time, they had previous drummer, they had Pete Best, that who really was not very good. And there's a documentary, 8 Days a Week, and you hear Paul talking about the first time when they auditioned Ringo, the first time they sat down with Ringo and started playing together, and they looked around at each other, and they just, like, that was the moment they became the Beatles. That was the moment everything gelled. And a part of it is, and Ringo's this very underrated drummer because he doesn't do, flashy solos or all that. But the thing about his sound, and like go through any of their albums, just listening to the drumming, listen to the drum and let everything else kind of be a little in the background. It's slightly clumsy. It's like divine clumsiness. It's like, the only other musician I can think of with this quality is Thelonious Monk. A lot of his piano playing, he sounds like he's falling down the stairs, like he's sort of falling on the keyboard, but just what comes out is against all odds, it's sublime, right? Ringo's the same way with his drumming. You always think he's gonna not quite make it. And there's this kind of, the surfers say goofy foot, where you surfing left-footed with the wrong foot in front, with your right foot in front. It just seems like it shouldn't quite make it, and yet somehow always does, and that puts this extra sauce on it. So if that hadn't happened, if he'd been given a left-handed drum kit to match his left-handedness, the Beatles wouldn't have been the Beatles, and a bunch of other things. So anyway, we're blessed. So guys, I'll be putting out my regular newsletter on Tuesday morning, and what I'm going to be saying is I'm taking next week off. I've been doing 3 shows a week for 7 months here, which is fine. I love it. But I think next week, our attention might be elsewhere. And I'm going to put out a newsletter. I'm going to offer maybe a few tips for getting through the week with your sanity intact.
Oh Lord, yes.
Yep.
Praise.
Okay.
Yeah.
May we find our pure serene in the next few days.
Find your pure serene by, as Malcolm X said, by any means necessary.
Are you taking off for meditation also?
Yeah. No Tuesday, no Thursday, no Sunday. You're on your own, kid.
Dean, I'm going hiking on Tuesday to a high elevation. I may not come down if I hear some news. I may not come down.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to stay at the top of Mount Baldy.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like the perfect thing to do that day.
Can you see the Pacific from there?
But sometime definitely. Catalina, yeah.
Like stout, like you'll be like Stout Cortez.
I don't know, but I'll be with the birds and the rocks and the trees and the blue sky, and I don't know what I'll pray when I get to the top. Maybe meditate. Good. With a friend. I'm going with a friend.
That's great.
Anyway.
Anyone else have fun plans for Tuesday? I think
I'll be on the voter hotline.
Yes. Yeah. If you,
all day.
Yeah. Hopefully Yafa is going to guide the person who casts the decisive vote how to do it. I'll be ordering the pizza. Okay, my friends.
All right.
Okay.
Then it's where I met you at the pizza place on Abbot Kinney.
Right.
That's right.
Invited me.
That's right.
That's right.
You still have that pizza? Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah. Gotta have pizza.
Another example.
We had
pizza, you wouldn't have come together.
That's right. That's right.
Tonight I was eating pizza for the first time since March.
Wow.
Because of the special holiday today, feast day, All Saints Day.
Right.
The cooks ordered pizzas for us. And we could choose 2 different kinds.
For All Saints Day, all saints must eat pizza. It says so. Which book of the Bible is that in, Judy? I know it's in there somewhere.
Whichever one you want.
Good. Good.
The translation makes a difference.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think we need to do some translating. Do a little updating. Okay, dear friends, may all beings swiftly realize their inherently blissful nature. May they all beings swiftly find that bright star, and may all conflict, all suffering, all distress evaporate like the ridiculous bad dream it was all along. And see you all on the other side.
Praise God.
Praise God.
Yes.
Enjoy your week. Thank you.
Enjoy your week.
The love.
Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy being.